The morning started like any other at Pine Grove Medical Clinic. Dr. Raj Kumar was pulling into his usual parking spot just as the sun began to peep through the autumn clouds. The crisp November air bit at his cheeks as he grabbed his worn leather bag from the passenger seat, already mentally preparing for his packed schedule of patient appointments. As he walked toward the clinic's side entrance, something caught his eye. A slight movement coming from behind the recycling bins. At first, he thought it might be another stray cat, but something made him pause. The sound he heard wasn't quite right. It was too soft, too human. Moving closer, his heart nearly stopped. There, tucked between the wall and a damp cardboard box, was a tiny bundle wrapped in what looked like an old sweatshirt. When he carefully pulled back the fabric, his breath caught in his throat. A newborn baby girl, no more than a few days old, lay there whimpering softly, her dark skin tinted slightly blue from the cold. "Oh my God," he whispered, quickly scooping up the infant. Years of medical training kicked in as he rushed through the clinic's doors, shouting for his nurse. "Rita, cancel all morning appointments. We have an emergency." The next few hours were a blur of activity. The baby was severely undernourished, weighing only 4 pounds and showing clear signs of drug withdrawal. Her tiny fingers trembled as Dr. Kumar worked to stabilize her temperature and check her vital signs. Rita, his head nurse of 15 years, quickly set up an IV while he made the necessary calls to the hospital and child services. As he watched the infant gradually gain more color and settle into a peaceful sleep under the warming lamp, something stirred deep within him. In 20 years of practicing medicine, he'd seen plenty of heartbreaking cases, but this one was different. The way her tiny hand had wrapped around his finger while he examined her, the quiet strength she showed despite her rough start in life. It awakened something protective in him. Who could leave such a precious child? Rita wondered aloud, adjusting the baby's blanket. The question hung heavy in the air as Dr. Kumar checked the security cameras, hoping to find some clue about the mother's identity. But the cameras had malfunctioned during the night, leaving them with no answers. Throughout the day, as social workers came and went, Dr. Kumar found himself returning to the exam room where the baby rested. During his lunch break, instead of eating, he sat beside her, watching her chest rise and fall with each tiny breath. He thought about his wife Priya at home and their years of unsuccessful fertility treatments. They had almost given up hope of having a child of their own. When the social worker mentioned the overcrowded foster system and the likelihood that the baby would be bounced between temporary homes, Dr. Kumar felt something click into place. This wasn't just another medical case. This was destiny knocking at his door. That evening, as he finally prepared to leave the clinic, he made one last call to Priya. His hands trembled slightly as he held the phone. "My dear," he said softly, "something happened today that I need to tell you about. I think I found our daughter." The baby girl, now peacefully sleeping in the hospital's ICU, had no idea that this day would change not only her life, but also the lives of everyone around her. The morning that began with abandonment would end with hope, proving that sometimes the greatest acts of love come from the deepest moments of despair. By the time Dr. Kumar drove home that night, his mind was already made up. He was already imagining a nursery in their spare room, wondering what color to paint the walls. Sometimes life's biggest blessings come disguised as challenges, he thought, and this tiny survivor had already claimed a permanent place in his heart. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of paperwork and hospital visits. Dr. Kumar spent every free moment at the ICU, watching over the baby girl who had so unexpectedly entered his life. The nurses had started calling her Little Miracle, and the name seemed to fit perfectly. Priya, his wife, came to the hospital right after her work at the local library each day. She would sit for hours in the rocking chair beside the incubator, her dark eyes filled with a mix of hope and worry. "What if they say no?" she whispered one evening, gently touching the glass that separated them from the sleeping infant. There must be so many rules about adoption. Dr. Kumar reached for his wife's hand, remembering their decade-long struggle with infertility. The endless doctor visits, the disappointed hopes, the quiet tears at night. All of it had led them to this moment. "We have to try," he said softly. "I can't explain it, but from the moment I found her, I knew she was meant to be ours." The social worker, Mrs. Chen, was understanding but honest about the challenges ahead. "Mixed-race adoptions can be complicated," she explained during one of their meetings. "And there's the matter of her potential health issues from the drug exposure. Are you both prepared for that?" The question hung in the air as Dr. Kumar and Priya exchanged glances. They had already discussed this late into the night, weighing every possibility. "We're doctors and nurses for other people's children every day," Dr. Kumar replied. "We'll do whatever it takes for our own." Their decision raised eyebrows in their small town. At the grocery store, Priya overheard whispers about that Indian couple adopting a black baby. Dr. Kumar noticed some of his longtime patients suddenly becoming distant. But for every person who pulled away, someone else stepped forward with support. Rita, the head nurse, organized a surprise baby shower at the clinic. The waiting room transformed into a sea of pink and yellow decorations, with staff members and loyal patients bringing gifts and well wishes. "Family isn't about matching skin colors," Rita announced, her voice firm as she handed Priya a handmade baby blanket. "It's about love." The adoption process moved faster than usual, thanks to the baby's abandoned status and Dr. Kumar's standing in the community. Still, each day felt like a year as they waited for final approval. They prepared the nursery in soft shades of mint green, filling it with stuffed animals and books. Priya spent evenings reading parenting blogs and joining support groups for transracial adoption, determined to learn everything she could. One rainy afternoon, as Dr. Kumar was finishing his rounds, Mrs. Chen appeared at the clinic with an envelope in hand. His heart raced as he called Priya, who rushed over from the library. Together, they opened the letter that would change their lives forever. "Congratulations." Mrs. Chen smiled, watching tears form in their eyes. "You're officially parents." That evening, as they brought their daughter home for the first time, the reality of their decision began to sink in. They named her Roshni, meaning light in Hindi, because she had brightened their world in ways they never expected. As Priya placed her gently in the crib, Dr. Kumar wrapped his arms around his wife's shoulders. "People might not understand," Priya said quietly, watching their daughter sleep. "They might say things." "Then we'll teach her to be stronger than their words," Dr. Kumar replied. "We'll show her that love doesn't care about color or background. We'll help her be proud of both her Indian and African American heritage." As if in response, little Roshni opened her eyes and gave them her first real smile. In that moment, all their doubts melted away. They knew there would be challenges ahead. Questions to answer, obstacles to overcome, hearts to change. But looking at their daughter's peaceful face, they were certain of one thing. This was the right decision. The spare room that had stayed empty for so many years was finally filled with the soft sounds of baby breaths and gentle lullabies. Their family might not look like others in their community, but it was perfect in its own unique way. Love, they were learning, comes in all colors, and sometimes the best families are the ones that life surprises you with. Time flew by like pages in a storybook. Before Dr. Kumar and Priya knew it, Roshni was taking her first steps across their living room floor, her tiny hands reaching out for balance as she wobbled between them. Each milestone was celebrated with the kind of joy that only parents who had waited so long for a child could truly understand. At 3 years old, Roshni was already showing signs of the person she would become. Her laugh could light up an entire room, and she had inherited her father's natural way with people. During his clinic hours, she would sometimes sit at the children's table in the waiting room, treating her stuffed animals with toy medical instruments while chatting with nervous young patients. "Dr. Baby makes everything better," one little boy announced after Roshni shared her teddy bear with him before his flu shot. Dr. Kumar watched from the doorway, his heart swelling with pride as his daughter naturally found ways to help others feel better, just like he did. The challenges they had expected came, but not always in the ways they had imagined. One day at the park, another child asked Roshni why she didn't look like her parents. Instead of getting upset, their 4-year-old simply smiled and said, "Because love picks all kinds of families." It was a phrase Priya had taught her, and hearing it repeated with such innocent confidence brought tears to many eyes that day. Their family's story began inspiring changes in their small community. Dr. Kumar started offering evening medical clinics for working parents who couldn't make it during regular hours. He remembered how it felt to be different, to face uncertain looks and whispers, and he wanted to make sure everyone who came to his clinic felt welcomed and cared for. Priya organized a multicultural story time at the library where she worked, featuring books about all kinds of families. Roshni would sit in the front row, beaming with pride when her mother read stories about adopted children or families of different races. Soon, other parents started requesting these books for their own children. One warm spring afternoon, during a community health fair that Dr. Kumar had organized, a young pregnant woman approached him privately. She was struggling with addiction and had heard about the doctor who had taken in an abandoned baby years ago. "I don't want to give up my baby," she whispered, "but I need help." Instead of judging her, Dr. Kumar connected her with treatment programs and support services. He thought about Roshni's biological mother, wondering if she had been just as scared and alone. This became the start of a new program at his clinic, helping expectant mothers who were battling addiction. Roshni's story had opened not just his heart, but his eyes to a need in the community. By the time Roshni started elementary school, she was already showing signs of her father's compassion and her mother's love of learning. Her teachers often commented on how she was always the first to befriend new students, especially those who seemed left out or different. "Why did you invite the new boy to sit with you?" Priya asked one day after school, when Roshni mentioned helping a recent immigrant who didn't speak much English. "Because his eyes looked lonely, Mama," Roshni replied simply, "and everybody needs a friend who understands what that feels like." At home, their house became known as the one where all children were welcome. Weekend afternoons often found their living room filled with kids of all backgrounds, sharing snacks and stories, while Priya taught them simple Hindi words or Dr. Kumar helped with science homework. The little girl who had been left in a cardboard box was growing into a bridge builder, bringing people together just by being herself. She had her father's gentle hands and her mother's kind smile, proving that family bonds grow from love, not blood. As Dr. Kumar watched his daughter growing up, he realized that saving her that cold November morning hadn't just changed her life. It had transformed their entire community. Through Roshni, people were learning to look past their differences and see the humanity they shared. She was living proof that sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow from seeds planted by chance in unexpected places. The questions started small at first. "Why do I have curly hair when you and Papa have straight hair?" Roshni asked one evening while Priya was helping her with homework. These innocent questions gradually grew more complex as she approached her 12th birthday. During dinner one night, she put down her fork and looked at her parents with those deep, thoughtful eyes that seemed to hold wisdom beyond her years. "Do you think my birth mother ever thinks about me?" she asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a delicate glass ornament, threatening to shatter the peaceful routine they'd built over the years. Dr. Kumar exchanged a glance with Priya. They had always been honest with Roshni about her adoption, sharing age-appropriate details as she grew up. But this was different. This was about identity, about roots, about the complex web of emotions that came with being adopted. "I'm sure she thinks about you," Priya answered carefully, reaching across the table to hold her daughter's hand. "And I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision for her." That night, after Roshni went to bed, Dr. Kumar sat in his study, staring at his computer screen. He had always known this day would come, but that didn't make it any easier. With trembling fingers, he typed DNA ancestry testing into the search bar. He and Priya had discussed this possibility years ago, agreeing they would support Roshni if she ever wanted to know more about her biological family. The next few weeks were filled with quiet research. Dr. Kumar reached out to old contacts in social services, careful not to raise Roshni's hopes too high. He remembered the security cameras had malfunctioned that morning he found her, leaving them with no clues about her birth mother's identity. During this time, he noticed changes in Roshni. She spent more time looking in the mirror, running her fingers through her curls, studying her features as if trying to piece together a puzzle. She started drawing family trees in her notebook, leaving blank spaces above her name with question marks. One afternoon, while helping sort medical files at the clinic, Roshni found the original paperwork from the day she was discovered. "I was so tiny," she whispered, tracing the numbers on the page. Dr. Kumar found her there, tears sliding down her cheeks as she read about her own beginning. "You know, finding you that morning wasn't just luck," he told her, pulling up a chair. "I believe it was meant to be. Your birth mother chose my clinic because she knew you would be found quickly and cared for." "But why didn't she want me?" Roshni's voice cracked, asking the question that had clearly been weighing on her heart. "Sometimes, sweetheart, wanting isn't enough," he explained gently. "Sometimes people have to make impossible choices because they believe it's the best way to show their love." That evening, Dr. Kumar showed Roshni the DNA testing kit he'd ordered. Her eyes widened as he explained how it worked, how it might help them learn more about her background, and possibly connect with biological relatives if any had also taken the test. "But Papa," she said, looking worried, "what if? What if finding them changes everything?" He pulled her into a tight hug, feeling her trembling slightly. "Nothing could ever change how much we love you," he assured her. "Learning about your roots won't make us any less your parents. It will just add more branches to our family tree." Priya joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them. "Family is like a garden," she said softly. "There's always room for more love to grow." Together, they helped Roshni swab her cheek and carefully seal the sample. As they packaged it for mailing, Dr. Kumar noticed his daughter's hands were steady now, her expression determined. She was no longer just their little girl. She was becoming a young woman ready to understand her own story. "Whatever we find out," Roshni said as they walked to the mailbox, "I'm glad you're the ones who found me that day." The search was beginning, not just for biological connections, but for answers to questions that had been waiting patiently in Roshni's heart. As Dr. Kumar watched the mailman take away the package that might change their lives, he silently prayed that wherever this journey led, it would bring his daughter peace. The DNA results arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. Dr. Kumar held the envelope during his lunch break, staring at it until Rita, his trusted nurse, gently reminded him that waiting wouldn't change what was inside. With Roshni at school and Priya at work, he decided to wait until they could open it together as a family. That evening, they sat around the kitchen table, the unopened envelope in the center like a delicate bridge between past and present. Roshni's hands shook slightly as she carefully tore it open. The results showed her genetic heritage, a beautiful blend of African American ancestry. But what caught their attention was a notification. There was a close genetic match in the database. "It's my birth mother," Roshni whispered, her voice barely audible. Dr. Kumar felt Priya's hand tighten around his under the table. Through the DNA website's messaging system, they made contact. Her name was Anita, and she had been looking for her daughter for years. Her first message was simple but filled with emotion. "I never stopped thinking about you. Not a single day." Over the next few weeks, they learned Anita's story through carefully exchanged messages. She had been trapped in addiction 12 years ago, living on the streets, pregnant and terrified. She chose Dr. Kumar's clinic that cold morning because she had seen his kindness to homeless patients who came for help. "I watched from across the street," she wrote, "until I saw him find you. I knew you would be safe." Anita had gotten clean 6 months after leaving Roshni at the clinic. The decision to give up her baby had been her wake-up call. She went through rehabilitation, finished her education, and now worked as a counselor helping other women struggling with addiction. One evening, while helping with dishes after dinner, Roshni asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. Can we meet her? Dr. Kumar and Priya had been preparing for this moment. They had already consulted with family therapists and adoption specialists about the best way to handle such a meeting. If that's what you want, Priya said softly, we'll be right there with you. The first meeting was arranged at a quiet coffee shop. Dr. Kumar arrived early with Priya and Roshni, watching his daughter smooth her dress nervously for the 100th time. When Anita walked in, time seemed to stand still. She had the same warm brown eyes as Roshni, the same graceful way of moving. You look just like my mother, Anita said through tears, maintaining a respectful distance. She would have loved to meet you, but she passed away last year. Roshni learned about her biological father too. He had lost his battle with addiction shortly after she was born. That's why I had to give you up, Anita explained gently. I couldn't take care of myself, let alone a baby, but I prayed every day that you were safe and loved. She is, Priya said warmly, reaching out to hold Anita's hand. It was a simple gesture, but it broke the tension. Soon they were sharing stories, looking at pictures, and building bridges between their worlds. As they talked, Dr. Kumar watched his daughter's face. He saw relief there, and understanding, but also something else. Pride. Pride in Anita's strength to overcome her struggles, pride in her own story, pride in having not just one family who loved her, but two. Your parents, Anita said, looking at Dr. Kumar and Priya with deep gratitude. They're everything I hoped for when I left you at that clinic. They gave you what I couldn't back then, a stable home, education, and most importantly, endless love. On the drive home, Roshni was quiet, processing everything. Finally, she spoke. You know what's amazing? She said, looking at her parents in the rearview mirror. Some kids only get one story about where they came from. I get two. A story about survival from Anita, and a story about love from you both. That night, as Dr. Kumar walked past Roshni's room, he heard her talking on the phone with her best friend. My family just got bigger today, she was saying, her voice full of joy. And you know what? There's enough love for everyone. The connection they had found wasn't an ending. It was a new beginning. Like branches of a tree reaching toward the sky, their family was growing in unexpected and beautiful ways. The weeks following their first coffee shop meeting brought changes no one had expected. Anita and Roshni began exchanging text messages, sharing little pieces of their daily lives. Photos of school projects, funny memes, and simple, good morning messages built a gentle bridge between them. Dr. Kumar watched this new relationship bloom with a mixture of joy and protective concern. One evening, as he was closing up the clinic, he found Roshni sitting in his office, looking at old medical records from the day he found her. Papa, she said thoughtfully, did you ever imagine that day would lead to all of this? He sat down beside her, remembering that cold morning that changed everything. Life's biggest gifts often come in unexpected packages, he replied, squeezing her hand. Anita had suggested meeting at the local park for their next visit. It was a sunny Saturday, and the familiar setting helped ease everyone's nerves. They watched as children played on the swings while they sat at a picnic table, sharing stories and slowly unwrapping the past. I used to come to this park when I was pregnant with you, Anita shared, her voice soft with memory. I'd sit on that bench over there and dream about pushing you on those swings. But deep down, I knew I couldn't give you the life you deserved. Roshni listened intently, her hand instinctively reaching for Priya's. Were you scared? She asked. Terrified, Anita admitted. But something inside me knew Dr. Kumar's clinic was the right place. I'd seen how he treated everyone with respect, even those who couldn't pay. I watched him help a homeless woman the week before, and I just knew. That's just Papa, Roshni said proudly, making them all smile. He says every person deserves kindness, especially when they're struggling. As the afternoon went on, they shared more stories. Anita told them about her journey to recovery, about the support group she now led, helping other women find their way back from addiction. She showed them pictures of her small apartment, her therapy dog, and the certificate she earned as a counselor. Your strength helped me find mine, she told Roshni. Every time I wanted to give up, I thought about you, hoping that someday I could look you in the eyes and show you I had become someone you could be proud of. Priya, who had been quietly supportive throughout, spoke up. You gave us the greatest gift of our lives, she said, her voice full of emotion. We would be honored to have you be part of Roshni's life, whatever way feels right. The conversation turned to practical matters. They discussed boundaries, expectations, and how to move forward. Dr. Kumar suggested they take things slowly, letting their relationship develop naturally. Anita agreed, understanding that trust and comfort needed time to grow. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Roshni asked if she could show Anita her favorite climbing tree. The adults watched as the two walked together, their similar gestures and walking styles suddenly obvious. Look at them, Priya whispered to her husband. They have the same laugh. Later that evening at home, Roshni sat between her parents on the couch, looking at old family photos. She stopped at one taken on her first day of school, her bright smile missing 2 front teeth. You know what's amazing? She said. Anita gave me life, but you both taught me how to live it. I have so much love in my story. Dr. Kumar noticed how she didn't say, my adoption story, or my birth story. Just, my story. Somehow, all the pieces were fitting together, not competing, but completing each other. That night, before bed, Roshni hugged her parents extra tight. Thank you, she whispered, for being brave enough to share me. As Dr. Kumar tucked her in, just like he had done since she was tiny, she asked, Papa, do you think we can invite Anita to my school play next month? Of course, Beta, he replied, using his special Hindi term of endearment for her. Our family circle just got bigger, and that's a beautiful thing. Their story was evolving, proving that love isn't divided when shared, it multiplies. In the quiet of their home, they were learning that family isn't about choosing sides. It's about building bridges strong enough to hold all the love they had to give. The headaches started small. At first, Dr. Kumar blamed them on long hours at the clinic. Then he began forgetting little things, where he placed his car keys, appointments he'd made, patients' names he'd known for years. During a routine checkup with an elderly patient, he called her by the wrong name 3 times. Rita, his faithful nurse of 2 decades, noticed first. She found him one morning staring at a prescription pad, pen hovering above the paper, confusion clouding his usually sharp eyes. Are you feeling all right? She asked gently. He brushed it off with a tired smile, but deep down, he knew something wasn't right. The defining moment came during Roshni's 16th birthday celebration. As they gathered around the dining table, friends and family watching her blow out the candles, Dr. Kumar suddenly couldn't remember the words to the birthday song. He stood there, mouth open, while everyone else sang. Priya caught his eye across the table, and he saw his own fear reflected in her face. The next day, he made an appointment with a neurologist. Priya insisted on going with him, holding his hand through the series of tests that followed. MRI scans, cognitive assessments, blood work, each test bringing them closer to an answer neither wanted to hear. When the diagnosis came, it felt like the ground had disappeared beneath their feet. Early onset Alzheimer's disease. The neurologist's words echoed in the sterile office. We caught it relatively early, but that evening, sitting in their backyard where they had watched Roshni grow up, Dr. Kumar broke down in his wife's arms. How do we tell her? He whispered. Their daughter, now in her junior year of high school, was already talking about following in his footsteps, dreaming of medical school. They decided to wait until after her big chemistry test that week. But Roshni, perceptive as always, sensed something was wrong. She found her father in his study one night, struggling to organize patient files, a task he'd done effortlessly for years. "Papa." Her voice was soft, concerned. "What's happening?" The truth came out then, not in the careful way they planned, but in quiet tears and trembling words. Roshni listened, her hands gripping her father's desk until her knuckles turned white. Then, instead of breaking down as they'd feared, she straightened her shoulders, just like he taught her to do in difficult situations. "Okay," she said firmly, "then we fight this together. Just like you fought for me when I was a baby." Word spread quickly through their small community. Patients who had trusted Dr. Kumar with their family's health for decades came by with food, offers of help, and sometimes just to share memories. Anita, who had become a regular part of their lives, started coming by more often, helping Priya with household tasks when Dr. Kumar had his bad days. The clinic staff reorganized schedules to reduce his workload while keeping him involved. Rita developed a color-coding system for files and appointments, making it easier for him to stay oriented. His patients, understanding and loyal, adjusted to the longer appointment times he now needed. Roshni threw herself into research, reading every article she could find about Alzheimer's. She started a support group at her high school for students with parents facing serious illnesses. On weekends, she sat with her father in his study, helping him sort through old medical journals, listening as he shared stories from his early days as a doctor. "Remember when you found me?" she asked one afternoon, showing him the newspaper clipping they'd saved. "You knew exactly what to do then. Now it's our turn to take care of you." Some days were better than others. On good days, Dr. Kumar still saw patients, his diagnostic skills sharp as ever, though he now relied on Rita to help with names and details. On harder days, he sat in his garden, Priya by his side, watching butterflies dance among the flowers they'd planted together years ago. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, their nightly ritual that had become even more precious now, Roshni made an announcement. "I've decided what I want to do," she said. "I'm still going to medical school, but I want to specialize in neurology. I want to help families like ours." Dr. Kumar looked at his daughter through tears, seeing in her face the same determination he'd had as a young doctor. The roles were shifting. He who had once been the rescuer was now being rescued, supported by the very love he had given so freely to others. "Time is precious," he told her, finding the words despite his increasing struggle with language. "But love remembers even when memory fails." Life took on a new rhythm as Roshni started her pre-med studies at the local university. She had chosen to stay close to home, turning down offers from prestigious schools across the country. "Some things are more important than rankings," she told her worried parents. "Family comes first." Each morning started with a familiar routine. Roshni would help her father get ready for the day, making sure he took his medications and had everything organized. She'd created a special calendar on her phone that synced with Priya's, tracking appointments and good days versus challenging ones. Between classes, she'd stop by the clinic where her father still worked part-time. His role had changed. Now he mainly consulted on complex cases, with another doctor handling most patient care. But his presence brought comfort to longtime patients who had trusted him for decades. "Your father diagnosed my diabetes 15 years ago," an elderly patient told Roshni one day. "He didn't just treat my illness, he helped me change my whole life. Now look at you, following in his footsteps." At home, the dining table became command central for Roshni's studies. Medical textbooks spread out beside her father's old journals. She'd read her assignments aloud to him. On his good days, Dr. Kumar would share insights from his years of experience, his eyes lighting up as they discussed different cases. "The books will teach you medicine," he told her during one such session, his words coming slower now, but still full of wisdom. But your heart will teach you healing. Priya watched these moments with bittersweet joy, seeing how their daughter had grown into not just a caregiver, but a bridge between her father's fading memories and his lasting legacy. She had taken on so much responsibility while maintaining her straight A's and volunteer work at the hospital. Anita became an unexpected source of strength during this time. Having fought her own battles with recovery, she understood the importance of support systems. She started coming over 3 times a week, cooking meals and sharing stories that made Dr. Kumar smile even on his hardest days. "You helped me find my way back to life," she told him during one visit. "Now we're all here to help you through this journey." The community rallied around them in ways that touched their hearts deeply. Rita organized a schedule of clinic staff and longtime patients who would visit regularly, keeping Dr. Kumar's mind engaged with familiar faces and voices. His old medical school friends set up weekly video calls, sharing memories and jokes from their training days. One particularly challenging evening, when Dr. Kumar was struggling to remember the name of his favorite medical instrument, the stethoscope he'd used for decades, Roshni found a creative solution. She started labeling things around the house with sticky notes, not just naming them, but adding little memories. "Stethoscope, the one you used to let me play with when I was 5. During her study breaks, she'd often find him touching these notes, smiling at the memories they triggered. It became their new way of holding onto the past while navigating the present. The hardest moments came during hospital rounds, where Roshni was doing her clinical rotations. Sometimes she'd spot her father in the hallways, being led to his own medical appointments by Priya. The role reversal was striking. The once confident doctor now needed guidance through the very halls where he had helped so many. But even in these challenging times, there were moments of pure grace. One afternoon, a young resident was struggling to calm a frightened child before a procedure. Dr. Kumar, there for his own appointment, instinctively stepped forward. Though he struggled with some words, his gentle manner and warm smile still worked their magic. The child relaxed, and Roshni saw the doctor her father would always be, regardless of his condition. "You see," he told her later during one of his clearer moments, "medicine isn't just in the mind. It's in how you make people feel." Every evening, as the sun set, they would sit together in the garden he had planted years ago. Roshni would read her medical notes aloud, while Priya tended to the flowers, and Anita, when she was there, would bring out cups of herbal tea. It wasn't the future they had planned, but it was filled with a deep love that transcended the challenges they faced. "Remember, Beta," he said one evening, using his special name for her, "sometimes the greatest healing happens not in hospitals, but in moments like these, surrounded by love." The day Roshni graduated from medical school, the hospital's main lecture hall was packed with familiar faces. In the front row, Dr. Kumar sat between Priya and Anita, his silver hair catching the light. Though his condition had progressed, his eyes still sparkled with pride as he watched his daughter receive her medical degree. As she stepped up to give her valedictorian speech, Roshni touched the small cardboard box pendant hanging around her neck. A tiny replica of the one she had been found in, now turned into a symbol of hope. She looked out at the crowd and began to speak. "My journey to becoming a doctor started long before I knew I wanted to be one," she said, her voice strong and clear. "It began on a cold morning when a compassionate doctor found a baby who needed help. That doctor became my father, and he taught me that medicine isn't just about treating illnesses, it's about healing hearts." Throughout the audience, there wasn't a dry eye to be found. Rita, now retired but still a close family friend, dabbed at her tears with a tissue. Old patients of Dr. Kumar's who had watched Roshni grow up beamed with pride. After the ceremony, something remarkable happened. As people gathered in the reception hall, a line formed, not just to congratulate Roshni, but to share stories about her father. Each person had a memory: the time he stayed late to help with an emergency, the house calls he made during snowstorms, the gentle way he explained complicated medical terms to scared patients. That evening, Roshni made an announcement during their family dinner. "I'm taking over Papa's old clinic," she said, "and I'm expanding it. We're going to open a new wing specifically for helping mothers struggling with addiction and their babies." Dr. Kumar, who had been having a difficult time with words lately, reached for his daughter's hand. "Full circle," he managed to say, smiling. The renovations began immediately. The clinic's new wing, named the Kumar Family Center for Mother and Child Care, would combine medical treatment with counseling services. Anita joined the team as a peer counselor, her own story serving as inspiration for others fighting similar battles. Priya, who had retired from the library, took charge of the clinic's new reading program for children of patients. The waiting room that had once held a tiny Roshni playing doctor now became a space of learning and hope for a new generation. On opening day, as Roshni cut the ribbon, she looked at the gathering of people who made it all possible. Her father, though needing support to stand, was there. Her mother, strong and steady as always, held his arm. Anita, whose journey of recovery had inspired the center's mission, stood proudly with them. The clinic quickly became known as a place where nobody was turned away, just as it had been under Dr. Kumar's care. Roshni brought in modern technology, but kept her father's old desk, his nameplate now sitting beside hers. On its surface, she placed a framed photo of that first newspaper article. "Local doctor saves abandoned baby." As months passed, success stories began to emerge. Mothers found their way to recovery, babies thrived, families healed. Each victory was shared with Dr. Kumar during their evening garden visits, where he might not remember all the details, but could still feel the joy in his daughter's voice. One particularly meaningful moment came when a young mother, just out of rehab, brought her baby in for a checkup. "I heard about what happened with Dr. Kumar and his daughter," she told Roshni. "It gave me courage to believe that leaving my baby at a hospital while I got help wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning." The legacy of that cold November morning continued to grow. In her father's old office, Roshni kept a small cardboard box on a shelf, not the original one, but a reminder. Inside, she placed notes from patients whose lives they'd touched, photos of reunited families, and stories of hope. "You see, Papa," she would say during their quiet moments together, "your story didn't end when you got sick. It just took on a new shape. Every life we touch here, every family we help heal, that's your love living on." And in those moments, even when words failed him, Dr. Kumar's eyes would light up with understanding. The little girl he had rescued had grown up to rescue others, turning a single act of compassion into a lifetime of healing. His greatest legacy wasn't just in the lives he had saved, but in the ripples of kindness that would continue long after he was gone, carried forward by the daughter who had taught him that sometimes the smallest beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings.